Thank you, Shaista. I think we are not taking yet any question. We will go to the each country report later on. And there, if any participant has a question, they can also ask the questions. But Sabani is there, I think, and without further delay, I think we need to move to Caroline's talk very soon. Sabani?
Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. You can, I hope I am audible and visible. Yeah. Thank you, Shaista. Thank you, Professor Tariq. Thank you, Fasi. Thank you, Esme. And it was a very enlightening project for all of us working from 4 different regions together. Today, I take the pleasure to introduce Dr. Caroline Wamala Larsson to give her keynote speech. Dr. Caroline Wamala Larsson has been appointed the new SPIDER Director, assuming the position from 1st September 2022. Caroline is Associate Professor with a PhD in Gender and Technology from Luleå University of Technology. Having been with SPIDER since 2011, Dr. Wamala Larsson is already a familiar name to SPIDER Connections. She has been the head of SPIDER's research program since 2015, managed bilateral collaborations with universities in Cambodia, Uganda, and Tanzania, as well as providing her expertise in gender and technology to capacity building programs run by SPIDER. I welcome Dr. Caroline to give her keynote speech. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here this morning. So again, thank you so much, Sabani. And thank you, Tariq, for the invitation and Shaista for the communication around this event. It's indeed a pleasure to always be a part of a dialogue such as this, which is critical in times that we find ourselves in. I don't know if I can share my screen because I'd like to give you a quick run through about SPIDER because we never assume that everybody knows what SPIDER is, but if I can just give a quick talk about what this is. I'm trying to do the screen share.
We can see your slides now.
Ah, perfect. Great. So SPIDER is, as you've already been introduced to, the Swedish program for ICT in developing regions. And as I've been introduced, my name is Caroline Wamala Larsson, the director of this center. Our current focus is on inclusive digitalization that benefits all. If I am to give you a quick timeline of how
Caroline, the slides are in the presenter view. So we can see like you're small in the other, both windows.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I change that?
Maybe stop again and show and try one more time. There is a display setting also on the top. Means otherwise it's also visible. You can try
this again. Is also visible. Could we go like this?
Yeah.
Because I think I would need to change the display settings and the time doesn't allow. So
okay,
I'll just continue, if that's okay. So SPIDER was established in 2004, and we have been funded by the Swedish International Development Agency, the acronym SIDA. And at the time of its establishment, the point was to combine academic institutions with community-based organizations to work together towards bringing more connectivity or access of digital opportunities. And so the institutions in Sweden would partner with institutions in academic learning institutions in the Global South to collaborate around specific projects, whether it was farming, socioeconomic development, education, etc., to really bring about not only scientific training, whether it was PhD, but also actively work in the community to bring about that transformation using ICTs as an enabler in this process. Then around 2011, the direction changed to focus more on what was called catalytic seed funding, where SPIDER would position itself as the one who would reach out to organizations that thus far had not worked with ICTs, but could see the potential of engaging with the technologies in order to have more reach or have more impact in the work they were doing, whether it was around transportation or whether it was about education or health. We worked with organizations that had thus far not engaged with ICTs. And we did that for 5 years before, again, changing direction and working more on a program approach, because we could see that this seed funding, while excellent in terms of giving the boost or the launching pad for these NGOs or partners, not all of them were able to scale their initiatives. Majority were able to scale their initiatives, which of course is exciting to see how much many of them have grown. But we wanted to see more engagement across program areas, whether it was education, combined with health, or health combined with agricultural farming. We wanted to see that integration of programs or themes or sectors for that matter. And then in 2016, we added another layer of, okay, it's not just about supporting programs, let's also build capacity, because it's something we had already been engaging with, where the idea of we're working in this context, but it's important that we ensure that when we eventually pull out with funding, the capacity is already locally anchored with the communities and they can continue doing the work themselves. And of course, CEDA, as I mentioned, funded this program that focused more on let's build the capacity within those who are actually working at policy level to ensure that the environment in which the projects we are initiating is conducive or acceptable for the digital transformation we're working towards. At the beginning or towards the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, we started with a country model of support with Somalia, whereby there's a huge Swedish investment, and we're part of the organizations that is working, Swedish organizations that is working in Somalia to bring about health systems development. And then, of course, 2022, at the heels of the pandemic, we have, of course, seen the need to be a bit more holistic in how we work with digital transformation. We recognize that work we've been doing for the past almost 20 years requires that in as much as we are changing or working with the transformations within the digital, it's really imperative that we co-create, co-produce the technologies that we're working with to, change our lives. And so if I were to try and put all of this into some sort of an overview of how SPIDER actually works, it's that we work with programs where we fund programs and initiatives that actually want to work with digital transformation. Research underpins everything that we do. And we at SPIDER, of course, as I was introduced, have been heading the research arm of SPIDER. We, in essence, act as supervisors or support to the research processes. So we have research partners in the countries where the initiatives are taking off who do the actual work. And this is critical in terms of them understanding the context, speaking the language, and being able to feed back into the initiative with real-time data. What we also do is build capacity, and then everything we do, it's critical for us to ensure that we share resources, whether it's knowledge or expertise or even other resources like finances, in a network. So we work through networks, and EPID, which many of you are aware of, is one of our flagship network that SPIDER has been supporting since its inception. I think it was 2006. So that's SPIDER in a nutshell, 4 pillars where we work with program support, capacity building, research that is underpinning everything that we do. And we, of course, try to ensure that everything we do is part of a larger network so that whatever we're doing is more scalable and sustainable at the end of the day. These are SPIDER's strengths in terms of what we aim to do. We want to work with researchers in the context where we're based. We seek to raise awareness, and of course, everything we do, we don't assume that ICT will transform our lives. That has never been the mantra at SPIDA. It's always been that everything we do has to be human-centered, and so on and so forth. So specifically, the idea around research and its impact in the work that we're doing has really given us access to a range of understanding of the realities in the world. And in line with the specific webinar today on the training on data sciences for girls in Asia, we have been part of initiatives that have sought to ensure that girls and women are part of the process of contributing to or developing their digital futures. And I'm happy to share that what you are experiencing in, as Shaista also shared, what you have found in Asia, for example, is not that different from, for example, this big project that we are a part of that is ongoing in Europe. This is called the Equals EU project, and you may have heard of the Equals Global Coalition, which is focusing on girls being a part of the digital transformation, not just as users, because thus far the focus has been on how can we get more girls to have access to technologies, how can we get them to use them and so forth. But now it's critical that they are part of the co-production or co-creation or whatever solutions are coming out of this process. And so Equals EU, this is now EU-based, it's based in 22 countries in the region, has focused on trying to figure out how do we support the underrepresentation of women in STEM, as also Shaista has shared. And the findings have been very similar, as I said, with what you presented, Shaista, in the sense that even across Europe, the representation of women in, for example, tech or innovation spaces is really limited. And of course, as SPIDA, we were excited to be invited to be a part of this coalition. And we contributed to this by leading the work around research to find out what was the state of the art across these 22 countries, how inclusive are innovation spaces when it comes to ideating around technical solutions and so forth. And the data, of course, was very, disheartening, considering that we're in 2022, 2021, the fact that women, even in Europe, are still underrepresented really requires that we do a little bit more. And so the way this project was designed, it's funded by the EU, was that, okay, we'll do research, but then we will also actively work with women and underrepresented communities to ensure that they are part of the innovation space or taking part in innovating. And at the end of the day, at the end of the 3-year project, can actually either come up with a product or a tech startup. And so across the 22 countries, it was actually 24 when it came to the hackathons, we were all, required to host hackathons or innovation camps and invite girls and underrepresented communities, that is migrants and so forth, to be able to come and ideate or hack around a specific social problem. In Sweden, we decided to focus on creating safer and more accessible cities. What kind of solutions could we come up with that could ensure that women and other minorities would feel safe navigating around their city in Sweden? And so we made this national. We invited people online. We started walking around the cities, pinning up, flyers and everything. There's nothing we didn't do. We took to social media. We went to universities and tried to recruit people. Nobody turned up. And this was, of course, a disheartening first experience. So I decided to find out what was the problem, because everybody approached thought this was a brilliant idea, bringing young women into a room so that they can spend the next 2 days ideating around how to create a safer and more accessible city, etc. So why were they not registering? What was the problem? And they said, well, first and foremost, the university is an intimidating place for some people like us. At the same time, I have no idea that an idea such as mine actually matters. And so this for me was like, oh, wow. So we need to actually maybe think about, first of all, where we host such events. It's critical to go to the community. And that's exactly what we did. We partnered with a community-based organization, and they did the recruiting of the young women within the community. And then we took the whole initiative to the community, where we asked them, what about your city makes you feel safe or doesn't make it accessible? And what would you like to do differently? At the end of this, we had 3 teams who came up with brilliant ideas, and we're supposed to choose one winner. That winning team wants to create a one-stop shop, like a platform that collects all these apps that you're supposed to use if you're feeling unsafe. And there's so many of them. They knew that, but they wanted to create a one-stop shop for these solutions, so that you know exactly where to go to look for them and to use them. And then the project, we then pass on the winners from each country. You pass on the winners to the next activity, where there will be an incubation program for the next 6 months. They'll be have access to training in business acumen, training in entrepreneurship, training in various topics that would really help them to grow their idea and take it one step further. We're now preparing for the summer school for these winners, who will then travel across to Switzerland, to Latvia. It was originally Ukraine, but we've had to change based on the situation there. We've now changed to Ukraine, and then I'm forgetting Spain. Yeah, Spain, Switzerland, and Latvia, where they will spend 3 weeks, 1 week in each country, getting more training, hands-on training. At the end of the 3 weeks, they're supposed to launch whatever it is. If it's an app, another social innovation product, or a tech startup, then they will receive that support to be able to contribute in some way to the digital transformation that is happening. So all of this was really very critical for us to recognize that we need to invest and really work hand in hand with young women, so that they can also be part of the STEM movement. But if we don't invest, if we don't have the data, we also don't know what's really happening. And that's why these are the projects that I want to share with you. If I just, I'm almost done, I promise. Just a second, okay. Can you see the Gender Justice STEM in Research in Africa webpage?
Yes, we can see them.
Yeah. So this project, for example, is now focused on Sub-Saharan Africa. The first one I talked about for Equals EU was in Europe. Now this is in Africa. Just essentially to share that the challenges in Asia are similar to Africa and also to Europe, and that we need a global movement towards ensuring that there's more representation of women in STEM. Now, the Africa project is also kind of similar, but we're trying to bring up more data, because we know that there are women in tech. We know women are working in mathematics. We know that there are women engineers, but for whatever reason, they're not visible. And how do we make sure that we visibilize these pioneers so that they can contribute to recruiting the younger generation or the coming generation to see the excitement and the benefits of being a part of the STEM movement. So essentially, what I want to give as a takeaway is that data is critical for everything that we engage in, so that we can understand the realities of what it is we're about to, step into. But it also shouldn't stop with data. We need to also invest in active initiatives that will ensure that we are supportive and investing in these young women to actively work in changing or engaging with technologies, engineering, maths, or whatever aspect of STEM we're talking about. Thank you so much.
Rabani is there. I'm not sure. Okay, is there any question? A very quick one question because Caroline also need to leave. And if there is any question, we can only have one question, and we need to move very quickly to Angela. She's here. Anyone want to ask a question?
I'll be around until at least 10 to 9, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, 10 to the hour. I realized I'm talking about
fine.
10 minutes to the hour, so I'll be around.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone would like to ask a question?
Hello.
Okay. Yes, Fasil.
Hello. Sorry, Tariq, I want to ask a question from Caroline. Caroline, thank you very much for your discussion, and I'm very glad to the things that you people are doing with Spider that have inspired me to ask a question, which we are also facing here. You mentioned that the challenges to the girls, women's in ICT in Asia and Africa are same. My question is related to how do you overcome or how do you counter the cultural bias? Because when we were going through this GIAD project, we encountered this cultural bias towards women and ICT. So how did you people counter that?
I think it's something we're still working with. We have to work. It's something we're still working with, and we haven't managed to counter, as you mentioned, in Africa, because it follows the women. Some of them who are trained in STEM at the same time. Once they graduate from university, then they take a mainstream job. They don't follow the career because of these cultural frameworks that tend to guide their options. It's something we're still working with, and this is why in the project with Africa, we want to visibilize more women in STEM, in a sense to kind of make sure that younger generations can see that it is okay, it's possible for women to work as engineers, it's possible for for women to actually be professors in mathematics, because this is a challenge. The cultural biases are still there. And the one way I think we can try and, I don't know, challenge them is to visibilize those who have actually managed to get there.
Yeah, thank you, Fasi. Thank you, Fasi, for asking that question. And of course, thank you, Caroline. I have a question. I work in this region, in the Asian region. I work on enabling women to use technology meaningfully. Is something that I work on, and I myself have faced this barrier that women without having a technological background or a technical background cannot actually understand technology.
Mm.
How do you face, how do we answer that question? That if I don't have the technical background to understand, it is taken for granted that if I don't have that background, I cannot understand technology.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever faced such a situation? Or because I keep facing it every day.
And yes, and this is that's why I shared our project here in the Europe project, where at least from the Swedish experience, where we thought we were very clear in communicating and inviting young women and other minority groups to come and ideate around the notion of creating safer and more accessible cities. And we realized that first and foremost, if you use language like hackathon, so language is critical. How you communicate is critical. If you use words like hackathons and innovation camps, you already closing off more than 3/4 of the people who would perhaps be interested in joining such an initiative. So we had to rethink, for example, how we communicate and work with ideas, with words like ideation. Come, your ideas matter. Do you have an idea of how you would want to I don't know, develop your city to make it more accessible or safer and so forth. And because we're one of the first countries, earlier countries to host our hackathons, we were able to actually share these experiences with the rest of the countries that hadn't yet done theirs. And then they could also correct the mistakes that we had made. So communication is key. Use words or language that the community you're trying to reach can actually relate to, where you share that it doesn't matter if you never coded before. It doesn't matter if you know how to code or whatever. Come. It's your ideas that we want. And we want to really pull out these young women, fresh ideas, and then take that and nurture it and develop your capacity to actually develop an app. So the young women, for example, who came up with the idea of a platform, none of them were coders. But now, through the incubation program, they have learned how to. And a year later, they're now even going into the summer school, and they have a prototype already, because what they have been doing is learning from those who know how to do these things, and they've received the training. So at the end of the day, it's how we communicate that really will draw people in.
Yeah, thanks much. Are there any questions for Caroline? Please feel free to switch on your mics and ask her questions. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Caroline, for that very wonderful presentation. And of course, to know about the work that Spider does, it's very interesting. And of course, I think it is going to be a very enlightening thing for our young students who are a part of this project. So I hand over now to Tariq and Shaista to go to the next part of the session.